there is a lot going on in the world today. And if you don't have some kind of a strategy to deal with all of the stress and all the inflation and all of the stuff in our world, it's going to be a real pain in the... With that in mind, I have here Linda Zaffram with Healing Circle Counseling.
Yes.
Okay, so today, let's start with how we met. Okay, there was a networking group, and I saw your assistant Jasmine and all of that. But I really had the opportunity to take you on to a radio show with me.
Yes.
Shout out to Mike King.
Yes, Mike's awesome.
And we really got together for an event that you were doing that you do every year, right? Climb Out of the Darkness, which is for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. Yes. So, was the 3 months before giving birth and the 3 months after, so the fourth trimester?
Yes,
right?
definitely.
And, my understanding of those things is just there's so many hormones that are fluctuating in ways that you can't control and sometimes can't even anticipate.
Yes.
And it can create a whole slew of issues. And that's kind of your bread and butter, or is it just one of the things you do and that was an event that you did for it?
Yeah. So I started the practice in 2012 as a solo practitioner. Okay. So I've grown it since then to the practice that it is. We have, I think, 25 people employees. I don't know, it fluctuates, but around there. So I started doing perinatal mood disorders as a result of me having gone through perinatal mood disorders myself after the birth of my son.
Pain to purpose.
Yes, exactly, 100%. So I had my son 39 weeks in one day. I had a traumatic C-section because he was sunny side up. He got stuck. So we had to do a C-section, which I was numb from the neck down, and that is terrifying. I don't know if you've ever had any kind of surgery, but...
Yeah, not like that.
Yeah, so I freaked out on the table. I'm like, get me out of here. I'm numb from the neck down. And so he was born via C-section. And then just dealing with the aftermath of having a C-section. A lot of women, we all want a vaginal birth, right? We all want to have the beautiful birth and have our children vaginally. And when that doesn't happen, there's this whole cascade of feelings around my body doesn't work right. I'm broken. And different thoughts and feelings that women have about our bodies based on not being able to have vaginal birth. Right. So then my son had brain bleeds in utero, we found out, postpartum. And so then that was the other part of what I guess transpired for my, anxiety and depression that occurred postpartum.
A lot of stuff is building. Yes, it was definitely building.
And I had a pretty much benign pregnancy other than some back pain, which you would be grateful for. But
sunny side up. That just comes with it.
Yes, it does. Yes, 100%. So and so I reached out to a provider. And there was very few this was in 2009 when my son was born. So there was 2 or 3 people who actually specialize in perinatal mood disorders. And
long enough ago for there to not be that many people.
Correct. There was 3 in Postpartum Support Virginia is a big organization that provides services for the state of Virginia. And so one of them I knew and I liked, and I'm like, oh, I might want to hang out with her one day. Don't want to see her. And then the next person I saw, she fell asleep on me.
I'm sorry.
On more than one occasion. She was dozing off during our therapy session.
Was she just that overworked or disinterested?
Well, I don't think it was either. I think so. I actually confronted her because I was paying cash at the time because she specialized in it. She didn't take insurance. So I'm I'm paying good money for this service. So I was like, do you realize you're falling asleep on me? And she was like, I was unaware that I was falling asleep. So she ended up having a chronic illness that she had changed medication, but still, in the midst of all of that, that was not something I wanted to deal with, right? I'm here to get help and you're falling asleep and I feel like it's personal even though it's not. Right. So then I decided to get training in perinatal mood disorders because I'm like, I can't be the only person who's had this experience. Right. I can't be the only person who's had a traumatic birth. Where are the people who are helping people like me? And so I went and got training and all the certifications for working with that population. I also became a birth doula because I was mad. I was like, well, I didn't have this beautiful butterfly birth, right? I'm mad that my body's broken. I need to figure out how other people have these amazing births. So I became a birth doula and realized that it's all hard.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how you birth, it's all hard. Vaginal birth is hard, C-section is hard, it's all hard. And so I realized through that training it actually gave me a lot of healing.
It's called labor.
Yes.
I know that sounds a little trite, and I'm definitely not mansplaining, but that's just always been my thought process. I've talked to people that have had the really beautiful experience.
Yes.
It's not too risque for my audience, but I know women that had been trained to interpret even the monthly cycle cramping as pleasurable. Yeah, because of the end. Yes. And they trained themselves for so long that by the time they did it, they told me they had an orgasm while they were giving birth.
Yes.
Because
people
can. You've heard of that.
Yes, yes. There is a thing called the orgasmic birth. Definitely.
Is that a book or is that like a...
there is, research and literature and a book about that, yes. And then Ricky Lake did a movie called, what is the name of it? I haven't heard that name. The Business of Being Born. Okay. So she did a big movement on having natural childbirth. Oh. And then, all these names are forsaking me. The mother of midwifery. Oh, gosh. I met her in person. I'll think of her name in a second. But she's done a lot of birthing stuff about natural childbirth and things like that. So there is an opportunity to have an orgasmic birth and train your body and do hypnotherapy and all of those things to get that result. So it is possible.
And then you have the completely opposite experience. And that's
where you have a
C-section. Where most of the patients that you deal with come from.
Yes. A lot of trauma occurs around it because oftentimes it's unexpected, right? You go in, I'm going to have a birth, or your baby's in a malposition, and so that's the only option if you're having a breech birth. So it's disappointing for many. Some people are okay with it. Some people schedule C-sections because they don't want to have to be surprised. They might have trauma. They might have sexual abuse, or have been a victim of rape or different types of sexual assault. So some women choose to have C-sections to avoid any kind of further trauma or to be triggered, right? Okay. There's so many people in that space when you're birthing that for many it could be very triggering because there's doctors, there's lights, there's people, it's like you're at your most vulnerable position, right? Like, one, you're naked in front of everybody. Two, you're having a baby, and there's so many, feelings and thoughts. So Ineme Gaskin, she's the mother of midwifery. I was like, it's going to come to me. Yes.
I've heard that name.
Yes, she's written many books, but so there's lots of literature around birthing. Gotcha. But so a lot of people have C-sections and they chew. So I always say birth how you want. It's your body, it's your baby. Like, I don't say one way is best for any person. It's best for the person choosing. I mean, I think that's the most important piece.
So is it more like presenting options to them and saying which one of these sounds like it resonates most with you?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And a lot of people want unmedicated. That's what we do when we doula, is we help assist moms and dads and families have, unmedicated natural births. So sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. If people decide during that process they want pain medication or an epidural, then that is their choice. And there's no shame in that. We all have our capability and a capacity.
Deal with what you can deal with.
Yes. Dealing with pain, everybody has a threshold. You probably get some people who can tolerate a lot, and you get a lot of people they get one little twinge and it's like my whole body hurts, right? So there's that spectrum of pain tolerance. So, and I think that as long as the person's happy with the outcome and their birth, it doesn't really matter how the baby gets here. It's personal choice. Right. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, the prenatal mood and anxiety disorders, how are you... how do people find you for that typically?
So I'm connected to Postpartum Support International, which is a global organization that provides education and referral sources and all of that on their website, Postpartum Support Virginia also has like a website where they can find us. People just Google. I've been around for a long time, so I've been doing it since 2009. And so people just know that that's what I do. I'm in a lot of the like Facebook circles and things like that. I'm not seeing as many clients anymore because I'm running the business, but I do see a few every week. And so we do have other clinicians at the practice who see that population, so they kind of get referred to them too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple questions that I have that are coming off of
Sure.
So that to me seems like easier. Like once they've had it, once they've had the child, then they're like, okay, something's not right, and they go looking for it. But if into trimester 2 or early trimester 3 something is happening, do people tend to go to those same Facebook groups to figure out what's going on? Or,
Yeah.
So it's mostly like referral people that have gone through something like that before. They're like, go talk to Linda.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of moms groups like on the internet, which is great because people can find resources. There's a lot of doulas who actually refer to us as well because they're working with moms, babies, and families.
Okay.
I really have been wanting to do a 4th trimester class for a very long time. There's not a lot of interest.
Right.
Because people don't think about it.
Right.
We spend so much time preparing for birth. Right? We take all the classes, the CPR, the how to change a baby's diaper, how to breastfeed, how to, bring the baby home. And a lot of people don't think about, because we don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So people don't know, how it's going to impact you when you bring the baby home. Not only, just having another person to take care of, but your relationship with your partner.
Right.
And so that's when we get a lot of people in because the husband's like, she's crying all the time. I don't know what's happening,
that
right?
was leading into my next question. Was like, is it mostly husbands and family members that are saying, okay, something's going on and you may not realize it, or is it the mom saying, I don't know what's happening with me, this doesn't make sense?
It's a lot of both.
Really?
I mean, we do get a lot of partners who reach out and say, you know what, my wife or partner is struggling. And so we do have mostly partners and then mostly moms. It's like, I know I don't feel right. I'm not bonding with my baby. I don't feel connected to my baby. I'm crying all the time. I don't want to get up. I don't want to take care of the baby. And then there's a lot of couples issues because you're renegotiating roles and deciding who's doing what.
I don't think they realize that if the baby takes an hour to feed and then they need to be fed every 2 to 3 hours, there's not a whole lot of time for you, buddy.
Yes.
And there's healing that's happening. And my wife did a lot, one of her internships as a nutritionist in the Philippines was with a birth clinic.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And, just talking about all of the way the hormones and the breastfeeding actually causes your body to heal faster.
Yes.
And I never knew that. They didn't teach us that.
Yes. Well, and nutrition is really important in postpartum and eating and making sure you're getting enough calories, especially if you're breastfeeding, which is really hard. And a lot of other cultures, they do a lying in period where the mom just lies in and everybody takes care of her. But that's not how American society takes care of postpartum moms. It's like, you just had a baby. Oh, you have staples. Oh, you're going to be home alone with the baby because everybody's at work or your partner goes back to work.
Right.
And
paternity is not nearly as long as maternity.
Well, no. And that's one of the things is hopefully with legislation and changes that I do not work with, but I support and go lobby with a Mom Congress, which is...
Mom Congress?
Yeah.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's a group of women who are moms who go legislate for changes in laws regarding birthing families. We've been instrumental in getting laws changed with bringing postpartum out of the darkness and screening moms and babies. So they do a lot of advocacy work for changing laws. So they're working on getting more paternity, maternity leave, right? We're the one country who it's like, oh, you get 6 or 8 weeks and then you have to go back to work. And it's like, I haven't even established a feeding routine. I haven't even healed from my C-section. You're not supposed to lift things. You're not supposed to be moving a lot, but they want you to go back to work. Right. And so working on those types of things, and equity, and, birthing for Black and brown families who there's a higher incidence of women's mortality.
Really?
Oh, yes. And treatment of care and in the services that they receive. So trying to do more education around what specifically they need to, obviously take care of and have a successful pregnancy and postpartum.
It's a huge topic, just because I see all of these things from the World Health Organization and like being ranked, like we're near the bottom.
Yes.
In developed countries.
Yes.
In infant mortality, and it's amazing because we think we're the best. I think we're the best at emergency medicine.
Yes.
But when it comes to the stuff about health, and we're not great.
Well, and just listening to women, right? Like a lot of women go in. I mean, look at Serena Williams. She went in, and she ended up having I think an embolism, some kind of blood clot after the birth of her daughter, and they didn't listen to her, and she ended up having to go in emergently. So realizing that we know our bodies better than we do. A lot of the medical research was not done on women. It's done on men. So our signs and symptoms are not the same. And just trusting that women know their bodies. I spent a lot of time, after having the birth of my kids, going in for other issues, and they're like, well, you're a mom and you work. Are you sure it's not just these things? I'm like, no, I just don't feel right. These things don't feel right, right? So trusting women know their bodies and know their symptoms. I mean, we're pretty attuned.
I know that you understand the insurance world, and that, I say this, and I'm like, somebody please prove me wrong at some point, but if you're a doctor or a nurse and you work for an insurance company, you've sold your soul.
Yeah.
And I'm like, please, somebody prove me wrong. But I haven't seen it. I had a conversation with Aetna. Yes, I'm calling you out, Aetna. Who told me that they were lowering my rates because I was spending more time with patients.
Yes.
And I said, but I bill you for 3, maybe 4 visits, and they're done. They don't see me again.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you're spending too much time. So wait, are you saying that I'm getting people better too quickly? Yes. Oh my gosh. I was asking that question thinking that you were going to say, yeah, you're right. That doesn't sound right.
Right. But I'm saving you tons of money, right?
I'm like, you'd rather me bill you 3 visits a week for a month than, 12 visits rather than 3.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense. But
it doesn't.
Insurance is not there for our health. It's there to protect from loss.
Yes.
So it's like they would rather you, not be able to walk at all and have a $20,000 surgery than come in and spend $3,000 to not have to have surgery.
Well, it's the opposite for women, because I actually went, after you have a baby, I always recommend that women go to pelvic health PT. Right? Because I had C-sections, but there's still pressure put on all your lady parts. And, women are not supposed to pee when they sneeze or cough, right? But that happens a lot postpartum. Right. That's not normal.
Right.
Shout out to my women's health PT people, but I always recommend that women go just for an evaluation. You might not need anything, but I had diastasis from carrying 2 babies back to back, that every time I did crunches, my stomach would dome, and I'm like, I don't think that's normal. Yeah. But no provider, no OBGYN was like, hey, you just had a baby, you should go to Women's Health PT and just get an evaluation. Nobody told me to belly bind. Nobody told me to do any of those things. So I think the medical model, just because we're all at the mercy of managed care, like you just said, they want to pay as little, and not really. They're not in it for the health. They're not in for They're not in for prevention. They're in for catastrophic and disastery stuff. So I got denied. So they're like, you can pay out of pocket to go fix it, because I was going and I wasn't getting better fast enough. Oh, okay. Because you're fixing people too fast, but I wasn't getting better fast enough, so they denied it. Okay. So then you either pay cash, and for those people who can't afford to pay cash, because not everybody can. Right. Like there's people on Medicaid who obviously are living, do not have the means to afford those types of services, and they're not cheap.
Right.
And so that's the kind of double-edged sword you can get, and you can get services. Sometimes insurance will reimburse you.
A little bit.
Yes.
A little bit.
Or if you submit it out of network, they'll pay for some, but maybe not all.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of people don't have any out-of-network benefits.
Yes. Or their deductibles are...
Oh, yeah. Gosh.
5,000, 10,000.
Right.
My daughter just had an upper endoscopy, and they're like, it'll be $2,500. I was like, this is lovely, right? Because,
wow.
Yeah, she's been having a lot of GI stuff. So the insurance world is a whole business that I wish Mom Congress, and I hope at some point navigates, because insurance company will say to us, well, why are they taking 2 years to do therapy? And it's like, well, because we've just uncovered a bunch of childhood trauma. They came in for the birth, but then we backdate it to like all of these other events, or if they've been sexually assaulted, or they've had childhood abuse, like that all shows up in parenthood.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely it does.
All the stuff that's been unresolved, or your own family of origin stuff that's happened, or if you've come from a divorced family, or you've just, had a normal childhood, whatever stuff.
Whatever that is.
Yes, right. Or you've been bullied in school, like all of a sudden you have a child and you're like, oh my gosh, they could be bullied, right? They go off to daycare, they go off to school, and so you have all these worries. I had so many worries. After I had my son, I actually had to buy a new car because I thought we were going to die in my car. That was part of my postpartum OCD I had, and I was like driving, and I was like, this car's like a tin can. I had to buy a new car. So I normalized that for women, because they're like, I'm freaking out. I have to buy all the new things, and because you want to protect your child, but that happens with a lot of folks. I've had some interesting clients who've done different things because of like anxiety around harm coming to their kids, because they've had their own experiences, or just for like society.
It's so interesting, like the different ways that our brains respond to trauma.
Yes.
And I kind of do this physically, but I say, when somebody hurts you, a lot of times you say, like they talk about the internal vows that you make to yourself, like, I will never be hurt like that again. So I'm going to do this.
Yes.
Right? And that's just one trauma. And then you're doing this and this and this. And now you're like, well, this is who I am. Like, no, it's not. That's your response to trauma.
Yes.
And like, we got to try to get you back to the factory version.
Yes.
Because sometimes it takes a while to uncover all that stuff, doesn't it?
Yes.
I don't know. I know there are so many different thought processes in psychology and social work and all that. I'm definitely a cognitive behaviorist, because from physiology, it's what made the most sense to me. That's the way my brain works, is physiology, right?
Yes.
So, but could you talk a little bit about some of the ways that people respond to different traumas, and like the anxiety, the depression, the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders? It's all that thinking my car is going to kill my child.
Yes.
All those
it's
little
Christine.
things, right. And it's interesting, because the brain just makes these connections, and it's not like you decided, oh, well, I'm going to fixate on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, no, we don't. I mean, and that's where the disturbance comes in. It's like, I don't want to be afraid that my car is going to somehow wreck and we're not going to survive that, but that happens a lot in parenthood. It's like it becomes irrational fears.
Right.
But I think, cognitive behavioral therapy is like changing thoughts and behavior. Doesn't work for everybody. I mean, I'm a therapist. I've been to therapy, right? I always tell all of my clients and my staff and everyone, if you're a therapist, you need to be in therapy. We don't show up in this field whole in all the things, right? We show up here because we've had our own experiences in life that brought us here.
Right.
And so, I think talk therapy has its place 100%. But sometimes people have been in talk therapy for so long, they're like, well, I've talked about it enough, I don't feel any better. And I've been in that position myself. So there's brain spotting, there's EMDR. EMDR I love, it's my bread and butter. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
And is that the goggles with the light?
Well, yeah, you can do lights, but it's like, it's doing this, like back and forth. It's the bilateral stimulation of the eyes and therefore the brain. So it reprocesses the traumatic event in a different way. So in EMDR, take like a traumatic event, and then you grade it on a scale of 0 to 10, which is most disturbing. You identify the negative cognition that comes with that. So like take, for example, a C-section. People say, my body's broken, I'm not enough. Then you want to identify what you want to believe about yourself. Then you rate that belief, which is from 1 to 7, which is completely true. 1 is completely false and 7 is completely true. Then you identify, it's a whole mind-body experience, which I love. I call it the quick and dirty of therapy, because you get through stuff so much faster, so much faster. And a lot of people are afraid of it because it is fast-paced therapy. And then you identify the body sensations, so it's a lot of body work, because as we know, body stores trauma.
Right.
And then the feelings that are associated with it. And so then we process through the events until they get down to like between a 0 and a 2. So that is one of my favorite therapies, and I've found a lot of like relief for clients. We can get through, like, they identify all their traumatic events, and we just kind of work through them. And kind of like you said, it's like some of them are connected to other ones, so then they're cleared out. And so you remember the event, but you don't have all the affect associated with it. So you're not going to be crying about it. You're not going to be sad about it. You can talk about it and not have all of those feelings associated with it. And the goal is to really create the narrative that you want to about the event and connect the positive event. Like, I am enough. Like, C-sections happen, right? Like, my body's not broken. It's just how birth played out. And sort of finding relief and healing in that. So then there's narrative therapy. There's psychodrama. There's so many different types of therapy. And I think that's what people should kind of look for when they're looking for therapy. Everybody knows CBT. That's the, like, golden ticket, right? That's what insurance companies reimburse for. We just started getting reimbursed for EMDR because Harry, he made EMDR, the Prince. Prince Harry. He did EMDR, and so it's been coming a lot, and like people are realizing the efficacy of EMDR and the work that it does, and how quickly people can move through, I think, some of their traumas. Yeah, so that's one of my favorites, and I love doing that. Yeah,
I've seen a lot of results with it.
Absolutely. I mean, stuff from like childhood. I mean, just being bullied, and so you can start anywhere. And so we just identify, like, tell me about the first time that happened, and then we kind of go with that, which is I've seen so much healing with EMDR. I really do love it. So yeah, especially for traumatic stuff.
It's truths are truths across different principles, right? That's how you know it's truth, because it can withstand different situations and it's still true. And, you know, in what I do, I always talk about how chiropractic, massage, and physical therapy, you need all three, and they need to take center stage at one point or another. But if you have all three of those professionals, they're going to have an argument about what needs to come first, right? So, like, that's why I say, you know, all three, right? That's what I do, is I don't have an ego about what happens first. And I said all that to say that I see it in learning, I see it in therapy, I see it in physicality, you know, and getting better from pain, is that the more parts of you that you integrate, the better your results are going to be. The stronger your healing is going to be, the stronger your resiliency is going to be to future traumas. So I like the fact that it's like, so to me, what you described with the EMDR, other than the eye movement portion, is what I think of when I think of the cognitive behaviorism, right? That's so that plus, you know, retraining the brain with the eye movement. That sounds awesome. Sounds awesome.
And it was big during the pandemic because we were doing a lot of virtual therapy because we were all afraid we were going to die, right? Like, everybody was terrified that they were going to get COVID and die because we didn't have a lot of information. We just knew that the world was in hibernation. So we do tapping now. Like, you can tap yourself. People are tapping, so it's been adapted to kind of, you know, morph with what, you know, the last couple of years had brought with the pandemic. So
so many people have had to morph different things, you know?
The
world is different because of one event. It's interesting. Like, my generation, which I think I'm older than you, but I'm not sure.
I'm a 70s kid.
Okay, all right. So I'm in my 40s, so I was more like I was.
So I'm older than you,
right? Okay, but for me, it was 9/11. For you, it might have been the Challenger. Because I think in second grade when the Challenger exploded, right?
Yes.
So it's like we all have something.
Yes.
And we all remember where we were.
Yes.
Right?
I definitely remember on 9/11 where I was, and what was happening.
And it's like, there's always going to be something else, and there's always going to be micro stuff in our families because people aren't perfect, and everybody's been hurt, and hurt people.
Yes.
So seeing what you do and my imagination is that with the results that you're talking about is that people become more resilient to future trauma as well, right? Have you seen that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as we heal ourselves, it's funny because I tell my supervisees when I do supervision, it's like I was a much different therapist when I started because I was numb. So I didn't have as much...
Not as much empathy, not as much compassion.
I had all of that, but it didn't sit on me like it does now, right? Like I could just be like, oh, we just had the worst session ever. It was so hard. It was so much trauma that they dealt with. And I would be like, done for the day. Now I like take that all in and it takes some space. So one of the things in our profession is honing in on a really good self-care and being able to purge that at the end of the day. I mean, the gym is one of my saving graces for that, but I do massage. I was doing chiropractic, but haven't done that in a while. Probably need to go back to that. But like how you take care of your own body and mind and soul, and like how do you purge all of that. I mean, you deal with people listening to them talk about their pain stories, listening talk about them being in pain in their body, and you have to be able to take care of yourself. So when I was a much younger therapist, I had empathy, I had compassion, I had all of that, but it was just, it didn't impact me now that I've done my own work and my own healing, which is such an interesting evolution, because if you asked me in my 20s if I'd be working with moms and babies and all the people that I work with now, I'd be like, no. Right. I'm going to be a kid trauma therapist for the rest of my life, but I don't do as much trauma work. Obviously, I do with moms and babies and things like that, but I would do like physical abuse, sexual abuse, like childhood abuse. That was like my thing when I was a younger therapist, but now it's like I have my own kids, and now it's like it sits on me just much more differently and much more heavier. So I try to like, space out my schedule sometimes to not have all the heavy trauma on the same day or to disperse it throughout the week. Not that I don't enjoy working with that, but I don't as much just because I have to like keep my own self-preservation at this stage in life. I'm 50. So like I've been doing this 20 some years, and that's a lot of stories. One of my biggest fears is I'm going to become senile and be in an old folks home. I'm going to start asking for clients because I feel like our work hasn't been done. That is like my biggest fear. I tell my colleagues all the time, like, I'm going to be asking for like, oh, I need Larry, and they'll be like, who's Larry? I need Larry because we still need to finish talking about these things. And they'll be like, she's crazy. But really, it's like I have like you take in every story. You don't have a choice but to, and it becomes so much a part of who we are as therapists and clinicians. But and we deeply care. I mean, I care so much about my clients. I think that's one of the things people don't get about therapists. We're not just like that at the end of the day. It's like I do care about their well-being, and I do care about them getting well and living their best lives, to be cliche, but like and having a life of being healed and being able to pass on that healing to their own future children, future generations, right? That whole like trauma gets passed down through generations, trying to help people heal so that they can stop cycles with that, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I will tell you that, it's I think it's across like healing professions that people have that type of response, because I'll tell you the hardest lesson that I learned as a doctor was I can't care about somebody's health more than they do.
Yes, that is true.
So, I advertise that, 88% of my patients get out of pain in 3 visits when they do the advanced pain protocol, right? It's actually a little higher than that, but I don't want to change all my messaging. Because I learned it, and those were my numbers when I worked with this other company. Sure. And it's gone up because I've added some things that I thought were missing, like in just my experience. So it's gone up. But said all that to say that the one, like when it was at 88%, who I would go home and think about is the 12. You know what I mean? Not the 88% that I helped, but the 12 that, like, for some reason it was not fast as I wanted it to be, or it wasn't, they weren't doing their rehab, so they weren't getting better as fast, so I would think about all of that, and I had a training doctor, Dr. Casey Crisp, who just kept telling me, he's like, you cannot care more than they do. You cannot care more than they do. You
Yes.
cannot care, you know, and I was working in a primary care office, and just seeing how many patients insurance was forcing these doctors to cycle through, and every single one of them was frustrated because they're like, I want to be able to spend more time. I want to be able to talk to them more, but I can't.
Yes.
You know, because it's not just like you have to cycle through the visits, but they're also, you know, I was routinely spending an hour finishing my notes after the end of the day.
Oh, easy, yeah.
And I was always, there were 2 or 3 doctors left after I did. Mm-hmm. You know, so they were spending these long hours doing these notes at the end of the day, and they're exhausted, and they're seeing 30, 35 people a day.
Yes.
And they're just frustrated.
Yes.
But what else can they do? You know what I mean? Because of the way the system is. So it's the same thing that you were talking about, trying to, you know, get to this place where, okay, I can take on all of these stories and let them go. That was tough too. My very first time treating somebody, so we had this thing where you treat other students first, and then you have to pass an exam, and then you can start treating people in the school, but, you know, they're supervised, but there are people from outside of the school, so it's like you're actually finally treating somebody that you don't know.
Right.
And the first time I walked in to one of those patients' rooms, I said, hey, I see you're dealing with this low back pain. Why don't you tell me about it? And he said, well, I was having sex with my girlfriend. And I was like, I am a doctor now, you know.
I've heard it all now.
Well, there are so many people that will, like, they know that I'm not allowed to talk about what happens unless they give me permission, right?
Right.
So there are professions like police officers that are like, well, we're told after a shooting that we have to go to therapy, but the therapist works for the department, and I'm scared if I'm really fully open with them, I'm going to get stuck behind a desk.
Sure.
And I want to keep my career.
Right.
You know, and I had 3 police officers in the same department that were actually in the same unit over in the Middle East somewhere. I'm not going to say where.
Right.
But, you know, they all were there for the same explosion, you know, and they all saw their buddies get killed, right? Like, watching that.
Yeah.
And, you know, don't want to go too deep into it, but one of the guys was like, my friend was all over me. You know? So, you know, there was...
that's so sad.
Right. But the 3 of them had completely different responses based on where they were standing, you know, and the way that they viewed it, and you know, so
and probably their relationship with the people they saw got killed, right?
Yeah. You know, but it's interesting because that could have wrecked me, because I heard that story, the same explosion, from 3 different guys at different times.
Yes,
and it was just like, you know, there's no therapist that I can really trust with this, and I know you can't tell anybody, so do you mind if I tell you? I'm like, go ahead, man. You know, and if I didn't know how to get that out of me, right, that could wreck me.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Well, it's secondary trauma is what we call that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so secondary trauma is for people who are the listeners of the traumatic events.
Right. You know, so it's just such beautiful work that you do, and I'm glad that you have a self-care routine that you know you've kind of figured out what works for you.
Absolutely, yes. Definitely the gym, because I'm a how I learn, I have to see it and do it, and how I have to purge is I have to get it out of my body. I mean, I've gone through like the whole just wiping myself down at the end of a session, like you with your aromatherapy in here, I have had to like cleanse my office or sage my office, but for me, like getting it out physically has been the best thing, because the mind, like, I can, like, you know, meditate, and I've done that, and it works sometimes, but sometimes my mind's like that whole monkey mind, right? But, like, for me, the gym is a place that I can put on my music, I can listen to a book, I can do what I want to do, and I have to burn it out. I have to physically get it out of my body. Yeah.
Gotcha. I think that would be a good thing for most of us.
Yes. So,
do me a favor. Just look right into the camera and tell people how they can get in touch with you.
How you can get in touch with Healing Circle Counseling is www.healingcirclecounseling.com, or you can call our intake line at 804-924-7600.
Okay. And the way I like to end these interviews is, like, we know you know your stuff. We know that you can help. You have good results. So if you're dealing with stuff, you know who to call, right?
And we have an amazing team. So we see kids from 4 through the lifespan.
Okay.
So we have a clinician who can see pretty much anyone. We have people who do substance use. We have people who see little kids. We have people who see teenagers. We have medication management now. Okay. We have someone who sees kids, and then the other 2 see 12 and up and 16 and up. So we have kind of like the full stop shop for anything like mental health related. So, yeah.
And you're on Parham Road.
Yes.
Correct?
We have 2 locations. One's on Parham, and then one's on Huguenot next to Chesterfield Town Center.
Okay. So if you don't want to cross the bridge, there's still somebody there for you.
Yes.
I don't know why that's such a big thing in Richmond.
It is such a big thing in Richmond. I don't even like to do it myself. Really? So, yeah. I'm like, I have to go to South Side today. It's very Richmond.
Well, to end it up, I like to, let people get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
So I have what I call the painkiller closer.
Okay.
Right? So the first question is always, what is the best piece of advice that you've either been given or you've heard somebody else give within your profession?
It was in graduate school. Okay. A friend of mine who was my supervisor both times. The one thing he said to me was 2 things actually that I tell all of my clinicians and my supervisees is behavior has meaning. Right? Like if someone's behaving in XYZ or a certain way, that has meaning. Like that should be interpreted and figured out why they're behaving that way. And the other one was like, don't let the bastards grind you down. Okay. I literally had that. I've had it written up on things just because don't let people get the best of you. Don't let people take your joy, take your purpose, take your meaning, take, your sense of self. And I think that's the biggest thing is we all have our own paths and journey. We all come with our hopeful best selves, right? We are all trying to do our best every day, and nobody knows our backstory.
Right.
I've had so many clients. I used to work with the indigent and underserved, and they would be like, well, Miss Linda, what do you know about this? And I was like, well, you only see who I am today. You don't see all the struggles and heartache and all the things that I took to get here.
Right.
And so I don't take that for granted with any person that I meet, is that we all have a backstory, and we all are the way we are because of our experiences, our family of origin, our, job histories, and all the things that bring us to where we are today. So I think that's the most important thing to think about. And people say, oh, you get along with everybody. I'm like, there's a redeeming quality around everyone. If I meet people and they're not my bread and butter, I will find one redeeming quality that I love about them, and I focus on that. I think that's also important. We all have something unique and special about us, so I try to
focus.
Yes.
Yeah, I really do.
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay, so what's the worst piece of advice?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. The worst piece of advice as a therapist. I mean, I can tell you what a therapist said to me.
Okay.
In one of my own therapy sessions. I was going for a relationship that I was in, and they told me to sublimate my desires for more into having a child with this person.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I'm thinking about leaving, so that's probably not a good idea. Yes, exactly. Right. It was one of the worst things that I had ever heard in therapy was to sublimate my desire for something different into having a kid. I'm so thankful I didn't follow that, that person's advice, but I think about this person to this day.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds like when I don't even know who tells it to these kids, but like college kids, they're just like, oh, you're only young once. Like, yeah, but the mistakes you make in your 20s will last through your 50s.
100%. Yes, don't get incarcerated. That will be on your record, right? Don't do all the dumb stuff. Don't jump off cliffs.
Right.
Common sense. But yeah, I've had some interesting therapists in my own career, and some of the stuff that has been said to me. I had a therapist eat lunch and never asked me if she could eat lunch.
During the session?
During my session. Yeah, this was when I was an undergrad, and she would just start eating, and I was like, what if I have an eating disorder I haven't told you about yet, right?
Right.
So those are the things that people are always like, oh, you can eat while we're in here. I'm like, no, this is your time. This is our space. I'll drink my water, but like, you can eat, you can do it. You need to take care of yourself. So that's one of my like pet peeves about therapy. It's like, this is about the person in the room, not me.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Those are probably the worst things that I've had happen as a therapist, getting therapy.
Right. So, we've talked a lot about the things that you do and the reason why you started moving into this area. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to assume that that's like, you know, the way that you would describe your purpose in life. So that's really the next question is, how would you describe what you believe your purpose in this life is? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny because I turned 50 this year, so I've been thinking a lot about my legacy and what I want to do with the practice in the long term and how I want my, you know, work in this life to be remembered. So, I mean, I think for me, it's like that saying, it's like people will always remember how you made them feel.
Right.
So I think the most important thing for me is to be remembered as someone who did good work, who was compassionate, who held space for people. I would really love for Healing Circle Counseling to live on beyond my legacy. So that is my goal, hopefully one day to sell it to someone who will continue to keep it moving in the universe. You know, I became a therapist because I went to Catholic school, and I did not want to be a nun because that's not for me. I'm too wild for that. But my thought was like, I want to serve God's people in however way that presents itself for me. And so this is the way that sort of showed up for me. I actually went to college because I wanted to be an attorney. Okay. Because I like to argue. Okay. And I like to win. But I went to class and I fell asleep. It was so boring. I was like, oh, this is the most gut-wrenching classes that I could ever take. So I decided that, I was like, maybe I was in psychology. Then I changed to psychology, and I did my bachelor's in psychology, and I did minor in social work, and I really loved the social work program. Okay. So I said, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. My goal is to write a book. Okay. I want to write a biography about my own life. I always tell my clients, when you read my book, you're going to be like, oh, it all makes sense now. But talking about my own, you know, upbringing, resiliencies, and how I got to the place that I am. Because people only, again, see me as I am today. But there's a whole backstory of a lot of things that I'd like to share. So, yeah. So those are the ways I'd like to remember, is just really as a healer and someone who's, you know, done a lot of work in this field. That's why we do all the community events that we do, because I'm passionate about giving back to the community as well. Yeah. Other
than the Climb Out of the Darkness event, what other events in the community do you do?
Yeah, so every year we do something around the holidays. So we've done the Backpacks for Homeless. Okay. So we collect toiletries for the homeless, and then we give them to Ernie. Ernie's the guy who runs the nonprofit Backpacks for Homeless. Nice guy. Okay. I went to school with him, and so he just got it turned into a nonprofit. So we do that every Christmas, and the team decides. So we've done that the last couple of years because we've really had a lot of buy-in for that, and we enjoy it. And then we do cookies with Santa and Frosty for free for the community. Okay. So we do that every Christmas. So if you don't celebrate Christmas, then we have Frosty for you. And so the kids come, you sign up, the kids come, it's free. You get cookies and milk. You go get to see Santa for free. One of the things is that I grew up in poverty. Okay. So not everyone can afford to go see a mall Santa. Right? It's expensive. If you have more than one kid, you can't, I mean, we never went to see a mall Santa. So
I don't think I ever thought about that they charge for those photos.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap at all. And then like the legendary Santa you have to pay. All the breakfast and brunches you have to pay. So we do it for free for the kids. And for anyone, really, anyone can come, but we hope that it gets to the population who obviously needs to come see Santa. Okay. So we do that, and then we do a diaper drive every year for Urban Baby Beginnings, and they help people who need diapers and after they have their babies and things like that.
Other than the hospital stay, diapers are the number one expense.
Yes.
Like formula if you
can't
breastfeed.
Yes. So they help, teen moms and single parents and families who need those types of resources. That's cool. So those are the 4 things we do throughout the year to sort of give back to the community. Yeah.
Cool. So that's obviously bringing a lot of value to the community, and value is kind of the centerpiece of the next question. Okay. What is something that other people value that you don't?
What do they value that I don't?
I love that question.
That's a hard question. I'm like, give me some examples of what people have said.
Well, I've had people that say money for the sake of money. More like money is all about what they can do with it. For me, my answer is tradition. Doing it a certain way just because it's always been done that way drives me nuts.
Yeah.
That's in my experience for me, as a muscle and joint pain specialist, what I've realized is what I was told in school, most of it's wrong. It's old. You know what I mean? And
yes.
There's been so much research since that says, well, they're like, oh, well, this the bone spurs can't resorb. They can't decrease. You can only keep arthritis from getting worse. You can't make it better. And I have seen in my own career that that's wrong.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Sure.
But with patients that were consistent, I've had a guy that couldn't bring his leg up because there was a piece growing off of his hip.
Oh, wow.
That was pinching it. And it took 3 years, but that thing is almost gone, because he was consistent with it. So that's just one of those things, like the rest, ice, compression, elevation thing that we've all been told since the 70s. It's completely wrong. Even the doctor that came up with that Rice, he was like, yeah, I was totally wrong.
Right. Well, because medicine and bodies and things evolve, right? I mean...
Well, it's more... a lot of that is trying to hide it. And a lot of that is trying to get the initial pain and the swelling to go away when your body's doing those things for a reason, right? Most of what has us like sick with flus and things like that longer is because we're trying to deal with the symptoms when the symptoms are really your body's allies trying to help you.
That makes sense.
Like germs can only live in a certain temperature range, so your body's like, all right, well, I'm going to get hot so I can burn this thing out. Right? So it sucks for a day or two. But if you let it burn it out, then you're not sick as long, right? But it doesn't feel good during. And the first stage of healing from physical damage is called inflammation. That's the first stage of healing.
Yes.
So what they're doing is they're doing rest and ice and elevation and all that stuff to try to get all of the inflammation out of there. I'm like, well, how's your body going to heal if you don't allow it to have some of that? I mean,
Interesting.
So it's little things like that, and the rest is going to take you away from the stress that tells your body how to rebuild it so that it's functional again. I'm pointing to the ankle.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people that their ankle was not dealt with correctly, and then they're wondering in 5 years why they have knee or hip or back
I believe
issues.
That, yes.
It's because your ankle doesn't move.
Right, throws off your gait.
Because you just rested it for 3 weeks. And, so one of my favorite patient stories, I think I've told you this before, is that I had a 14-year-old soccer player who had badly sprained her ankle in gym class, and they wrapped ice around her ankle with caution tape because they didn't have an ace bandage, right? So they literally, I was like, you've got to send me the picture of that, of the caution tape. And so I have a picture of it. But her father is a friend of mine, so he called me, because the mother was taking her to ortho on call to make sure it's not broken and all that stuff. And they had her on crutches, they had her in a boot, and they're like, you're going to be in this for 3 weeks, And I was like, bring her in here. As long as it's not broken, bring her in here.
Right, yeah.
And she was walking that next day.
Wow.
And on Monday, she goes to gym class.
That's crazy.
Yeah. On Monday, she goes to gym class. She's running.
Wow.
And the teacher's like, stop. Right? She just, she had to come get a note from me. I'm like, if she can run, let her run.
Right. Yeah, and it's not
because
broken.
It was just because the gym teacher was also her soccer coach. So she was like, there's no way. I've seen injuries like this all the time. There's no way that you're able to do this. And she's like, well, I'm doing it. What are you talking about? And it doesn't hurt when I do it. So it's just, I was told my whole career, you sprain your ankle, you're going to be down for 2 weeks.
Right.
When I had a doctor that told me, like, no, why? Why not?
Right.
If they can do it, they can do it.
Right.
You know.
That makes
so,
sense.
you know, I learned how to do it, and it's just totally different than what I was taught. And we're going off on a tangent, but
that's okay.
But it's just, there's so much stuff in education that's the basis. This is a good place to start.
Yeah.
And it's called practice, because you're supposed to be getting better.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
And
100%.
I am a much better doctor than I was when I graduated.
Well, of course, yes, because your experience and working with people and all of those things. Yeah.
Right. So for me, you know, the tradition is, oh, you've had this injury, you need to rest for 2 weeks. That annoys me to no end, because it's, I mean, I understand you were taught that. I was taught it too, but I know that is wrong. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So for me, figuring out new ways and better ways to do things, as long as they're both, right?
Right.
New just for the sake of new irritates me too. It's
right.
like, if it's actually better, let's do the new way.
Right. That makes sense. Yes. So I do have my answer to your question.
I talked long enough.
No, that's okay. Time. As I get older, the value of time and the importance of how you spend it and who you spend it with.
Okay.
So I think that, you know, cultivating relationships and cultivating the right friendships, relationships, people you spend your time with, like you and I talk about ROI and things like that, right? So where is your time best invested? And that's professionally, and that's personally, and that's like within my, you know, with my kids. They're getting older. They're getting ready to. They're both in high school, so time. I would say.
Other people not valuing their time as much.
Yes.
I don't know that it's interesting, because when you're younger, time seems to move slower.
Yes.
Because it's a bigger percentage of your life.
Yes.
Right. But then when it starts to become a smaller percentage of your life, you're like, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yes.
This is running out faster than I thought it was going to.
Yes. Well, and how you use your time. I mean, the internet is such a time suck for so many people.
Gosh.
People waste so many hours on the internet. So, like, really just valuing my time and like making time to go to the gym and making time to take care of myself. Whereas before, I didn't always prioritize that. So for me, I would say time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So, kind of related, kind of not. Your choice.
Sure.
If you had the power to make one law that everyone had to follow, what would it be?
Oh, wow, that would be a lot of power.
Just one, though. Just one.
A law that everyone, I would say for the all intents and purposes, like kindness. Everybody should just be nice. To be kind, to be thoughtful, to consider where people come from. That would be like my law for like humanity. But like for government, it would be like to support moms and babies more, and to give, paid time off, and to help fund small businesses. Because that's one of the things I worry about as a business owner is when they pass all these laws, like some of them could bankrupt my company because we don't make a lot of money, right? And however, I'd love to support, obviously, giving paid time off for maternity leave and things like that. That's not something we could afford. So more government assistance, I think, with small businesses when it comes to stuff like that. But it would be mostly around like families, moms, babies, the care that we receive, and, helping to finance. I'm always like, why can't they just use Social Security to pay moms to stay home for a year, right? Like, why couldn't they use that type of resource? I've paid into the system. It's my money that we've given into. And even for those who haven't, like, why can't they pay Social Security for 3 months or 6 months or some type of period of time? That would be my soapbox that I would want to be passed, some type of law to help. Because a lot of other countries, they get a year off. And we don't. We're going back in 6 or 8 weeks, and moms are not ready. Then they're falling apart. They're afraid they're going to lose their job. They can't lose their job because they need their benefits and their income. And so I think that would be it, as funding for moms, babies, and families. But for humanity, just be nice. Be kind. We don't know what someone's going through. We don't know what they've been through. And, everybody has a story and a journey, and I think we should try to be compassionate about that for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So, switching gears again.
Sure.
You see so much during the day. When you have that time, like, so you were talking about, like, when you're, able to put your headphones in at the gym and just, listen. what is one, like, I guess media? It could be like a type of music. It could be a podcast. It could be a book. You know, what Netflix show, whatever. You know, what is one media thing that you're passionate about?
I mean, my downtime, I watch a lot of Netflix.
Okay.
A lot of dumb, smutty stuff.
Okay.
Not really smutty, but like, you know, just dumb. Like, I don't know, like, we're watching, I've watched the whole Grey's Anatomy series, right? We're watching This Is Us again for the second time. In the Neighborhood's a good comedy that a friend of mine who's a fellow clinician, we started watching on vacation. It's hilarious. It's a black comedy, but it's very well written. It's a black neighborhood that a white person moves into, so the perspective of that. I try to not read a lot of self-help books. So Colleen Hoover's a lot of books that I've read. They're about like relationships and love. I like, what's his name? I'm reading his autobiography now. Oh gosh. He says, all right. He was in Dazed and Confused, Matthew McConaughey's
That's right. Okay.
autobiography.
I was like, there are a few people.
I'm reading that. So
Kevin Hart?
Yeah, no. I like to read autobiographies a lot just because I like to watch people like overcome, right? So I like to read autobiographies.
Those are the best stories.
They are. Yeah. Well, and you learn a lot about people that you don't know. Like you see Matthew McConaughey and you think he's always had it easy, but his dad was an alcoholic. His parents had a lot of problems. So it was interesting to read. He was raped like at some point in his life. So things you just wouldn't expect when you look at him. So I like to learn the underpinnings of what make people tick.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what did you say? Actions have meaning, right?
Yeah. Behavior has meaning.
Behavior has meaning.
Yes.
That was the word.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So when you're done, right? We're almost done. When you're done in life, in your career, how do you want to be remembered?
As someone who was compassionate, had a lot of empathy. I think people would describe me as driven because I drive myself very hard. A lot of people are like, no one has the stamina that you have. A lot of like employees are like, only you could run this place. Because I work a lot. I work really hard. And I want to see the success of everyone. I don't come from the scarcity mindset, so I have a lot of friends who own other practices, and I want them all to succeed. There's more than enough work to go around here in Richmond, and people come to us because of what we offer, and they go to them because of what they offer. But just as someone who's made a difference in their life, really, I have a friend of mine who I worked at Capital One while I was in grad school. And he kept a card that I had given him, that was encouraging him, and he took a picture and sent it to me. Wow. So that was meaningful to me. So just that people remember me and the kindness and the empathy and the encouragement that I give people. I think that's how I want to be remembered when the end comes. Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, Linda, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me. I feel like blessed to be asked and privileged, so I appreciate your time because this is also your time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Tell them again how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. You can get in touch with Healing Circle Counseling. You can look at our website at www.healingcirclecounseling.com. You can call us at 804-924-7600. Or you can email us at hello@healingcirclecounseling.com.
Still love that. Hello at Healing Circle. It's great. It's so much better than info.
Yes. Yeah.
Linda Zaffram, Healing Circle Counseling. The Cuddler Chronicles. Pain-free living beyond the body.
Yes. Thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.